What if a villain is evil not because he wants chaos? What if he's evil because he genuinely believes he's the only competent person in the room? Victor Von Doom is what happens when genius gets wounded, grief gets armored, and one unresolved trauma decides to apply for world domination. He's a dictator in a metal mask, a sorcerer with a PhD level grudge, a man so committed to being right that he will literally rewrite reality before he considers the possibility that maybe, just maybe, he could have handled one conversation differently. And honestly, that's what makes him so compelling. Because Doom isn't just a supervillain, he's a psychological archetype. He's the part of us that says, if I can control everything, I'll never be hurt again. If I become exceptional enough, no one can shame me. If I'm always right, I never have to feel powerless. And if that doesn't sound a little too relatable for a Friday, then congratulations. You are either emotionally regulated or in denial. Sometimes the villain isn't driven by hate. Sometimes he's driven by the unbearable need to never feel helpless again. So, grab your emotional armor, polish your mystical metal faceplate, and let's talk about the most dramatic man in Latveria. Welcome back, fellow mages, to the Grounded Mage, where we explore how myth and magic exist in everyday life. And today, we are diving into Dr. Doom. His tragic backstory, his impossible standards, his obsession with control, why he can't let Reed Richards go, and what psychology tells us about perfectionism, narcissistic injury, trauma defenses, and the terrifying ways brilliance can become a prison. Now, I should warn you that there is a lot to unpack in this week's episode. Dr. Doom is a very complex villain, so please excuse the amount of reading I'm going to do today. I just don't want to miss anything. Now, if you somehow missed him, Dr. Doom, Victor Von Doom, is one of Marvel's most iconic villains. He's usually presented as a genius inventor, a sorcerer, ruler of Latveria, frequent enemy of the Fantastic Four, occasional cosmic threat, and a full-time employee of the Department of, I could have gone to therapy, but I chose a cape. He is equal parts tyrant, tragic son, political symbol, wounded child, Shakespearean menace, and the patron saint of overcompensating. And the thing about Doom is he isn't just power hungry. No, that's too simple. Dr. Doom doesn't merely want power because it feels good. He wants power because he believes he is uniquely capable of using it correctly, and without total control, everything falls apart. And now we're already deep in psychological waters, because that belief is not just villain logic. That's trauma logic. So let's get into it. All right, let's start where all great villains begin. Childhood trauma. Victor Von Doom was born to Romani parents in Latveria, often depicted as a harsh, oppressive environment. His mother, Cynthia Von Doom, was a sorceress who made a deal with dark forces, usually Mephisto in many versions, seeking power to fight oppression. That goes badly, as demon bargains often do. His father, Werner Von Doom, was a healer, a doctor, a man trying to survive under tyranny. Victor loses his mother young, and then he loses his father too, often after fleeing persecution in the cold, with his father dying trying to protect him. And if you're keeping score at home, that's early bereavement, chronic instability, social marginalization, intergenerational trauma, exposure to injustice, and a front row seat to this lesson. The world is cruel, unsafe, and weakness gets people killed. That's not just a tragic backstory. That's a psychological forge. This is where Victor learns some core beliefs that become his entire personality. Love is fragile, safety is temporary, powerlessness is fatal, the system cannot be trusted, and if I don't become stronger than the world will take everything. And suddenly, Dr. Doom stops looking like a guy in a metal mask with a dramatic posture and starts looking like a kid who never emotionally left the snow beside his father's body. That's the thing with trauma. It doesn't always make you collapse. Sometimes it makes you become terrifyingly competent. There's a concept in trauma psychology that becomes very useful here. When life is chaotic, dangerous, or humiliating, people often develop control-based coping strategies. This can look like perfectionism, hyperindependence, emotional suppression, overplanning, mistrust, needing to manage every variable, difficulty delegating, and intense reactions when things go off script. I can definitely relate to that last one. Now, most of us express this by color coding our calendars or having a very passionate relationship with our Google Docs. Victor Von Doom expresses it by conquering nations and building murder robots. Different scale, same nervous system theme. Research on trauma and control often shows that when people experience helplessness or unpredictable threats, they can become highly motivated to restore a sense of agency, sometimes in healthy ways, sometimes in rigid or domineering ones. And Doom is the extreme version of this. He doesn't just want agency, he wants absolute agency. Because to Doom, if anything is outside his control, then loss becomes possible. And if loss becomes possible, then the original wound comes back online. So ask yourself, where in your life do you confuse control with safety? Not, do you like being organized? That's fine. I mean, where do you believe deep down that if you loosen your grip, everything will collapse? Where do you overfunction because vulnerability feels dangerous? And where are you trying to prevent pain by becoming impossible to surprise? Because Doom is extreme, but he's not unfamiliar. Now, let's talk about one of the most deliciously petty and psychologically rich rivalries in comic book history, Dr. Doom and Reed Richards. Because if Doom were just a traumatized genius, that would already be enough. But then Marvel said, what if we gave him one specific man to obsess over forever? And thus, Reed Richards enters the chat. In many versions, Victor and Reed meet as students. Victor is already brilliant. Exceptional, really. He builds a machine often intended to contact or free his mother's soul from hellish captivity. The machine is flawed. Reed warns him. Victor ignores him. The experiment fails. Victor is scarred. Now, depending on the version, the degree of Reed's responsibility varies. But psychologically, what matters is this. Doom cannot tolerate that Reed might have been right. Oh, this is catnip for psychology, because what we see here is something that's often called narcissistic injury. Now, pause before anyone hears narcissism and assumes I'm saying Dr. Doom just takes too many selfies. In psychology, narcissistic traits can include grandiosity, intense sensitivity to shame, difficulty tolerating criticism, a need for superiority, defensive self-enhancement, rage or obsession when one's self-image is threatened. And Doom? Doom is basically narcissistic injury in a cape. He can handle enemies. He can handle war. He can handle cosmic entities. What he cannot handle is being fallible. Because if Reed was right, then Victor made a mistake. If Victor made a mistake, then he is not perfect. If he is not perfect, then he is vulnerable. If he is vulnerable, then he is back in the original wound. This is why some people don't react to feedback like feedback. They react to feedback like it's an existential attack. So, when someone corrects you, what gets activated first? Curiosity or shame? And follow up, do you get defensive because the information is wrong? Or because being wrong feels emotionally unsafe? Because Doom doesn't hate Reed merely because Reed is smart. He hates Reed because Reed is a witness. A witness to the moment Victor was not in control. A witness to a crack in the myth. A witness to the fact that brilliance did not save him from error. And for someone who built his entire identity on superiority, that is unbearable. Okay, You want to talk about the mask? I want to talk about the mask because Doctor Doom's mask is one of the greatest visual metaphors in comics. In many tellings, Victor is scarred in the failed experiment. The scar is often described as relatively small at first, sometimes not even catastrophic by objective standards. But to Victor, it is intolerable because the scar is not just physical damage. It is proof. Proof that he failed, proof that he was wounded, proof that he is not invulnerable, and proof that the world got through. And then, in classic Doom fashion, he puts on a superheated iron mask too soon and arguably makes it worse. Which is, wow, like that is such a psychologically powerful image. A man so desperate to hide his wound that he deepens it. And if that's not human, I don't know what is. Because how many of us do that emotionally? We get hurt once, so we become colder. We get betrayed, so we stop trusting. We get embarrassed, so we become hyper-performative. We get rejected, so we become unreachable. We get criticized, so we build an identity so polished, no one can touch it. And in trying to protect the wound, we fuse the armor to our skin. That's Doom. The mask is not just intimidation. It is identity management. It is shame regulation. It is emotional anesthesia. There's a lot of research around shame suggesting that shame is not just, I did something bad. Shame is, I am bad, or I am defective. And people often cope with shame in one of two broad ways: collapse inward or defend upward. Doom defends upward. He becomes more grandiose, more controlled, more untouchable, more superior, more armored. So, what is your mask? Not literally, unless you are also ruling a fictional Eastern European nation, but what persona do you wear so people don't see the scar? Competence, humor, spiritual wisdom, busyness, being the strong one, being the chill one, being the one who has it all together? And what would it cost to loosen it? Just a little. Here's where Dr. Doom gets even more dangerous, because he's not just a man who wants control. He's a man who can point to actual evidence that sometimes he really is the most competent person in the room. And that, my fellow mages, is where wounded brilliance becomes morally terrifying. Because what happens when your trauma defense actually works? What happens when your perfectionism gets rewarded, your control gets results, or your arrogance is sometimes backed by genius? That's where we're going next. Dr. Doom is not written as a character who wants destruction for destruction's sake. He wants order, stability, power, protection, domination. He believes the world is broken. And on one level, he's not wrong. He sees corruption, weakness, chaos, incompetence, greed, violence, and then he concludes, fine, I'll just do it myself. Except not in a fun Thanos meme way, in a terrifying authoritarian way. This is what makes Doom so psychologically fascinating. He often has a moral self-concept. He doesn't see himself as a cackling villain. He sees himself as necessary, justified, burdened by greatness, the only one willing to make hard choices, the rightful steward of a chaotic world. In Latveria, depending on the story, people may genuinely be safer, more stable, or more materially secure under his rule than under surrounding chaos. That ambiguity matters because it asks a very uncomfortable question. What if someone can produce order and still be profoundly unhealed? That happens in real life all the time. Some highly functioning people build companies, run families, lead teams, become experts, create systems that work. But underneath all of that, they are still operating from fear, rigidity, unresolved grief, or the inability to trust anyone else with imperfection. So yes, Doom can be effective, but effectiveness is not the same as wholeness. Competence is not the same as emotional maturity. Being right is not the same as being free. Perfectionism. Let's talk about that next. And not the cute Instagram kind where someone says, I'm such a perfectionist, and then posts a color coordinated bookshelf. No, I'm talking about the painful kind of perfectionism, the kind where mistakes feel catastrophic, self worth depends on performance, rest feels unsafe, failure feels identity threatening, criticism feels annihilating, and other people becoming frustrating because they're people. Psychology often distinguishes between adaptive striving and maladaptive perfectionism. Adaptive striving is, I care about doing well. Maladaptive perfectionism says, if this is not flawless, I am unacceptable. Doom is maladaptive perfectionism with sovereign immunity. His grandiosity can also be understood as compensative. Now, this type of grandiosity is when someone develops an inflated self-concept not because they're deeply secure, but because that grandiosity is defending against fragility, shame, or inadequacy. So when Doom says, essentially, I alone can save the world, part of that might be arrogance, but part of it is also, if I am not supreme, then I must face what I cannot prevent. That is much sadder and much more dangerous. Where in your life have you confused excellence with worthiness? And what happens in your body when you make a mistake? Do you recover or do you spiral? Do you apologize and move on, or do you over-explain, overwork, and emotionally vanish? Because Doom isn't just about ego. He's about the pain underneath ego. One of the coolest things about Dr. Doom is he isn't just a tech genius. He's also a sorcerer. And honestly, that makes him even more grounded mage coded, because Doom refuses to choose one framework. Science? Yes. Magic? Also yes. Engineering? Absolutely. Occult mastery? Obviously. He wants mastery across all domains. Why? Because partial power is not enough. If there is a force in the universe that could still outmaneuver him, he must understand it. That's psychologically fascinating because it points to something deeper than ambition: intolerance of limitation. Doom cannot abide the idea that some things are beyond him. And in real life, this shows up in subtler ways, like needing to know everything before you start, endless researching instead of risking, over-intellectualizing emotions, trying to solve grief instead of feel it, and treating uncertainty like a personal insult. Some of us become mini dooms when we say, if I can just understand enough, prepare enough, optimize enough, heal enough, learn enough, then I will finally be safe. But life is not a system you can fully close. There will always be uncertainty, loss, surprise, limitation, mystery. And the mature response is not omnipotence. It's humility. Doom would rather fight a god than practice humility. Honestly, respectfully iconic, deeply unhealthy. Where are you trying to master so you never have to feel uncertainty? Knowledge, productivity, healing, spirituality, money, relationships? And is that mastery helping you live or helping you avoid? Dr. Doom also works because he is what psychologists and myth thinkers would call a shadow figure. In Jungian terms, the shadow is the part of ourselves that we reject, repress, or fail to integrate. And Doom is often the shadow of several heroes at once. For Reed Richards, Doom is intelligence without humility. For Tony Stark, Doom is genius without conscience or vulnerability. For Stephen Strange, Doom is mystical ambition without surrender. For T'Challa, Doom is sovereignty without service. He represents what happens when gifts become unintegrated. Your strengths are not automatically virtues. Your gifts can become your traps. Intelligence can become contempt. Competence can become control. Confidence can become domination. Resilience can become emotional avoidance. Vision can become grandiosity. The question is never just, what am I good at? The deeper question is, what does my gift become when it's ruled by fear? What strength of yours becomes dangerous when you're dysregulated? For example, your empathy becomes people pleasing, your ambition becomes self punishment, your dependence becomes isolation, your leadership becomes micromanagement, your insight becomes overthinking. That is doom territory. Here is something that sounds obvious, but we never actually think about. People are often drawn to certainty, especially in chaotic times. Dr. Doom is charismatic not because he's warm. He is famously not the human embodiment of a weighted blanket, but because he projects absolute conviction. He knows, he decides, he commands, he appears unshakable. And humans, especially anxious humans, can find that deeply seductive. Psychology and leadership research shows that in uncertain environments, people can prefer decisive, even authoritarian leaders because certainty feels regulating. It feels like relief. Someone else knows what to do. Someone else will make the hard choices. Someone else will impose order. But certainty can be a costume. Confidence can be a defense. And people who seem most invulnerable are not always the most grounded. Sometimes they are simply the most armored. Now that matters personally too, because we can become followers of our own internal doom voice, the rigid voice, the punishing voice, the there is only one right way voice, the voice that mistakes intensity for truth. So when you're scared, whose voice do you obey inside yourself? Is it wise, compassionate, grounded, or harsh, rigid, perfectionistic, absolute, impossible to satisfy? Because if your inner leader is Dr. Doom, no wonder you're exhausted. Here's what makes Dr. Doom so much more compelling than a one-note villain. He's often written as someone who is almost redeemable. Almost. He loves in his own way. He honors certain codes. He can show loyalty. He can display restraint. He can even, in some stories, genuinely protect his people. He's not empty. He's defended. And that distinction matters. Because some of the hardest people in real life are not devoid of humanity. They're just barricaded away from it. And the tragedy is, Doom cannot cross the bridge from power to vulnerability. He cannot relinquish the identity that protects him. Because if he ever truly softened, if he ever truly admitted grief, shame, helplessness, or regret, then he would have to become a person instead of a legend. And for Victor Von Doom, the legend is safer. How many of us do that on a smaller scale? We cling to identities that once protected us. The achiever, the fixer, the strong one, the smart one, the healer, the rebel, the independent one. And then one day, the identity that saved us starts to suffocate us. So, what version of yourself once protected you, but may no longer fit who you're becoming? All right, part of what we do here is talk about how these characters and stories can relate to real life. So, what does Dr. Doom teach us in real life? Honestly, a lot. He teaches us that unprocessed grief can become domination, shame can become armor, brilliance can become isolation, competence can become a hiding place, perfectionism can masquerade as virtue, certainty can become cruelty, and trauma can dress itself up as destiny. But maybe the biggest lesson is this: control is not the same as safety. You can optimize every routine, anticipate every problem, become wildly competent, learn everything, outwork everyone, build an empire, wear emotional titanium, and still be deeply afraid. Because fear does not leave simply because your systems are excellent. Sometimes fear leaves only when you grieve, when you trust, when you allow repair, when you let yourself be seen imperfectly, when you stop demanding godhood from a nervous system that just wanted protection. Dr. Doom wants omnipotence. Healing asks for humanity. And humanity is harder. Before we close, I want to leave you with a few final questions. You can journal these, think about them, mutter them dramatically while staring out a window like you're in some prestige streaming adaptation, whatever works for you. Where in my life am I trying to become untouchable instead of becoming honest? What mistake or wound am I still organizing my identity around? Where does my need to be right hide a deeper fear of being vulnerable? What would healthy power look like for me? Not domination, not collapse, but grounded agency. If I removed the mask, what part of me would need compassion first? Now, these are not simple one-word answer questions. And then again, neither is Dr. Doom. If this episode hit you somewhere between, wow, that's fascinating, and I feel personally attacked by a fictional dictator, first of all, same. Second, I would love to hear from you. What fictional characters should we ground in a future episode? Who's your favorite beautifully complicated menace? Who's your favorite walking coping mechanism in a cape, crown, or cursed amulet? If you're watching on YouTube, drop your thoughts in the comments down below. What's your biggest takeaway from Dr. Doom? Is he a narcissist, a trauma survivor in armor, a perfectionist gone cosmic, or all of the above with extra monologuing? And if this episode gave you a new lens on your own patterns, your control, your perfectionism, your inner mask, share it with a fellow mage who needs it. Because sometimes the most powerful magic is naming the thing underneath the armor. Thanks for hanging out with me in Latveria today. Next week, we end Arc 2 with Rachel, the Raven. Until next week, fellow mages, make it make magic.